Hey, welcome back. We're still here at AUSI Xponential in Atlanta at the Auterion booth live. And now I'm here with Arnaud from Auterion. Please introduce yourself right quick to the audience.
Yeah, so I'm Arnaud Thiercelin. I run enterprise product and engineering at Auterion.
Great. So, two differences for this conversation compared to the former conversations that we have here. Number one, I want to talk about really the bigger picture. So not to go too much into specifics, but really big picture. Number two, I want to talk about the future because we were talking about products that have been introduced, about new releases of the software, about current topics that are going on. So now let's basically switch gear and let's talk about the future.
Sounds good.
So let's say from a technology perspective, how do you see the industry? Where is it going? Where does it need to go to basically, in the future to address the needs and the requirements that we have?
Yeah. So I think the number one need that be addressed by this industry is addressing the diversity of types of vehicles that enterprise customers are fundamentally going to be asking for.
Right.
And I'm not talking diversity of aerial platforms. I'm talking about the entire spectrum: ground, water-based platforms, and aerial as well. The focus is still very much drones, but this is what's going to come after. But the next part is going to be not just handling this diversity, but also the scale of these programs, and also handling them as they're becoming more and more autonomous.
Okay. So it's about diversity in terms of where to apply, how to apply these systems, and not only about the hardware, but also about the software around that.
Absolutely.
And probably also around how you manage those platforms, right?
Absolutely. So yeah, once you start getting programs of a certain size, the logistical burden of it starts to be extremely heavy. In this ubiquitous world of autonomy, what you end up having is these vehicles need to start coming and talk to you and explain to you what's going on about them, rather than you having fixed procedures on understanding when to maintain them, when to service them.
Okay, so let's stick with that for a moment, right? You mentioned the ubiquitous autonomy. So what exactly is it that what exactly does that mean, ubiquitous autonomy?
Yeah, it's a concept where we're really seeing the whole industry start to work on. We're talking about ground robots delivering food. We're talking about self-driving vehicles, cars for passengers, or trucks for cargo. We're talking about drones doing an inspection entirely on their own with the press of a button, drone in a box, VTOL aircraft using power line inspection, and the list goes on and on like this. It's very much a world where we're capable of putting mobile robotics evolving in a way that is safe and productive inside our human world.
Okay, so yesterday I was talking to Nathan about the Auterion suite, and the suite, he really described this as being like an enterprise robotics program management tool.
Absolutely.
But I think what you are talking is even like one level above, right?
Absolutely. So, I mean, the suite today is really there. It's really here to manage the robotic program of a company when they're trying to do all sorts of different things. But it's fundamentally going to evolve to be handling when all these platforms become more fully autonomous. So taking in a much higher level of intent and then making a decision based on what you really are trying to do, dividing, conquering between multiple vehicles to do the job done, and then reporting back in real time about how each and every one of the systems that you're handling. So you have the reassurance that this autonomy is secure and you can actually trust it. Because fundamentally, that's always going to be the make or break moment, that people can trust this vehicle to navigate autonomously in the world.
Right. Okay, so now before we talk how you see Auterion like in this whole picture, now if we like step back and look at today, so what is it mainly that Auterion on a high level is doing for their customers?
So we very much work on three legs. The first one is on technical standards and very much creating an open standard layer for the entire industry to adopt and piggyback on. And open standard means that anybody can adopt it without any royalties, without any permission from anyone.
Right.
That's fundamentally what we are really working on. The open source layer on top of it is implementation of that standard so that people can start adopting it and having a higher starting point. The rest of our software infrastructure is very much meant to help people having a higher starting point and get even more productive. And that takes me to the second thing that we're doing, which is providing a comprehensive stack of technological component for manufacturers to be able to actually create vehicles that are going to be bringing value to the customers.
Right.
And as a way of bringing in value to the customers, that takes me to my last point, which is we're really focusing on creating products that have direct value for the end user, mostly on working on the operational side of things. So more than fleet management, more than control on the ground of the vehicle. We're also talking about mission planning, understanding the airspace that you're navigating, and all of the data pipeline, making sure that you have an easy way to extract and consume the data that you're producing with your vehicles.
Okay, so it's the open standards that basically enable everybody or the industry to participate.
Absolutely.
It's our work to enable manufacturers, then to number 3, create these solutions that actually solve the actual use cases for the end customer.
Absolutely.
So that's what's happening today. So now let's go back to what we talked about looking into the future. So where do you see specifically Auterion like catering to that needs about the ubiquitous autonomy you described before?
So we're continuously improving the software that runs on the vehicle. We have a very unique position where we understand everything that's happening from the vehicle all the way to what's happening in the cloud.
Right.
And because of that, we're capable of continuously improving each and every one of these components towards having an autonomy that is providing you value right away. And this is coming from very simple element that people are already taking for granted today, like collision avoidance or obstacle avoidance. So one is stopping in front of an obstacle to make it safe and reliable. So you trust the platform is not going to destroy itself. It doesn't fall onto you as the pilot to gain full control at any given time. The other one is I have a tree in the path of mapping my field. I'm going to understand, my vehicle is going to understand it needs to go around that tree to continue the job that it was asked for. And then it goes on and on towards more and more collaborative mission where you can have a scenario with multiple vehicles working together towards doing a mapping of an entire field or searching for a person that's been missing, and then communicating with each other in real time once the person has been found so that the others come back to base and the behavior of the vehicle that found the person, for instance, can be changing to adapt to the new dynamic that has been discovered.
And it could even, as you mentioned earlier, probably include like air vehicles, ground vehicles.
Absolutely.
Submarine, whatever you can imagine, right?
Absolutely. We're talking scenarios like having a VTOL aircraft like the Vector doing an overall inspection of a oil and gas site where you have the pumps for EPA compliance, and then going a quick skim of what's going on, not necessarily understanding what the problem is, but understanding where the problem is, and then activating ground assets who actually can do a closer inspection on the site, for instance. This is the kind of autonomy that works for people. And you as the operator, as the person responsible for these sites, all you really want to say is just make sure my site is EPA compliant. And this is the level of intent that ultimately you want to have and throw at a ubiquitous autonomous world.
So it's a kind of an intent-driven mission.
Absolutely.
And then you like take all these components that are necessary and that work together and are managed to actually get that intent or that purpose done, right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
Great. So coming back to the present, to the show this year, so it's day 2 now, like 1.5 days are past. You've had a lot of conversations with people. So what was it usually about? Was it about topics like this? Was it about the future, or was it more about the here and now? And yeah,
it's a little bit of both, but I would say it's like skewed more into the here and now.
Okay.
And what we're seeing is a huge interest for Skynode because we're capable of providing a solution that is already taking the starting point a bit higher.
Right.
But it's clear that we still have quite a bit of work to keep bringing that starting point higher so that manufacturers can really focus on their specialty. Getting a vehicle going is an insane amount of work, and we really want to get that stuff going. On the other side, we see them very interested into the capabilities that the suite can bring to them. One is going to already be thinking about how I'm going to be managing 10 or 100 or thousands of my vehicles in my customers' hands. And when they're looking at management is like the logistical element to it. We want this to be frictionless and then all the data management happening to it. Autonomy is very much demanded for safety and practical reasons today, but we're not just yet really looking at a ubiquitous autonomous world. But it's going to be a long journey to get there. So it's not something that we plan at the last minute. It's something we have to start working on right now.
And that's an interesting point. You mentioned that. So we were talking about the suite mainly from an end user perspective, like a program management. But now you mentioned manufacturers using this tool themselves for their fleets of their customers, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
it also brings those worlds together, right?
So yeah, and the way we build the suite is that it's kind of the health book of the vehicle from the moment that is manufactured by the OEM manufacturer. They're going to have a bunch of information. There's tons of tools that help them understanding the dynamic. They don't have to peel off logs and everything like this. And we're continuously improving this developer tool set for them. But that vehicle, once it's been manufactured and tested, is transferred to the owner. And all of that record is remaining in here and in the hands of whoever owns the vehicle at that time.
Right.
Which creates a seamless and frictionless communication between the manufacturer and the end user, where they're capable of talking and really managing the life cycle of that vehicle from the moment that it's being built to the moment that it's being decommissioned.
And the last thing that I noticed, or that you were touching on while you were talking, is data, like data that is basically being connected from the vehicle to the suite or to wherever else. So that concept of these data pipelines, tell us a little more about that.
So really two fronts. We're seeing that there is an absolute unquestionable step to pass, which is an SD card-less world. And we're talking about breaking down this mindset of removing that card and then bringing it there, etc. And this is a very complex problem to solve because the data that we're creating is getting bigger and bigger every day,
Right.
and the link that we're having are not catching up at the same pace. But there's all sorts of different strategies to actually solve this problem, and we're actively working on every single angle from it. And we're capable of doing this because precisely we're all the way from the vehicle to the cloud, including the ground controller, including the radio link, including the LTE integration. We really are everywhere to solve this problem. So that's first, the logistical management of that data. The second part is providing the proper entry point to process that data and get value from it. And what we really want is to create an infrastructure for people to pick their best data processing tool, the one that's really going to get them the answer that they want, because we tend to talk a lot about the data, but it's going to end up in a point where it's going to be forensic in nature, and the only thing that people are going to care is the last trickling resulting answer that they were looking for, which is my side
the intent you were talking about, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. The pictures you're going to have, all that huge amount of data, is not something that you will want to continue looking at once you're going to trust that your system is reliably and consistently providing you the answers you're looking for.
So now to close the loop back to the ubiquitous autonomy, what is it that you basically ask or wish for from the whole industry to make that happen as efficiently and as quickly as possible?
It's a very complex layered problem, and I think we really need to come together and start agreeing on standards that are serving everyone and not any specific interest. That would be my very big ask, and that we're capable of tying these technical standards to practical real-world applications that are being validated by people who are experts in policy and experts in technical standards that have been proven to go into the real world. If we're capable of really come together around these terms, and we're really trying to be open as an entity by pushing these standards that we do not own, I think we can go much further along. It's time to start shaping, technically speaking, what this autonomy would look like.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So that was Arnaud Thiercelin from Auterion, and talking about the future and the ubiquitous autonomy that we're aiming at. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
It's been a